afternoon, and welcome to this special edition of the Vision Alignment Show. I'm your host, Brian Wagner, and we have a special guest today that I wanted to bring on and tell you a little bit about what he has done. Now, before we do that, I also want to tell you about the other hosts or the other guests that we've had on today. In the Vision Alignment Show, we had on myself, and it was me presenting. But the the Stroke of Genius show at 11:30 Eastern was with Josh Pellin, and I highly encourage you to go out and look at that video that he graced us with his presence and did an awesome interview. So I highly encourage you to go out and take a look at that. But when you do that and you're looking at the video, put in a hashtag replay and where you're calling in from and what may I be able to help you with. Maybe I can help you with something to help you with your blind spots or possibly the people you're serving. Well, either way, I'd love to help you in any way I can. Without any further ado, I'd like to bring on my good friend, new friend, Shawn Davis. Hey, Shawn.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Hey, doing fantastic. Living my best pandemic life out here in California.
Yeah, where in California are you?
We're in Northern California. So we live just outside of Auburn, California. So the base of the foothills, gold country. We're about 45 minutes away from Lake Tahoe and about 35, 40 minutes outside of Sacramento. So kind of in between the two.
Ah, okay. Awesome. Good place to be.
It's a great place to be, except for this time of year, we always hold our breath a bit because literally and figuratively because of the fires. So you know, our house is 2 acres, but we're literally on what used to be an old Christmas tree farm. So we've got nothing but pine trees that surround us. So we always get a little anxious this time of year. If you hadn't heard, California's been a bit on fire. So
yeah, I've heard that. That's scary. That's a little unnerving, I would think.
Yeah, you know, it is, especially this time of year, it is. But, you know, like I put my faith and trust in God, and what's going to be is going to be. And, you know, I don't want to sit and wallow in fear. So, you know, but it's good. It's fine. Beautiful weather. It's sunshiny, blue skies. We're smelling some fresh air. So I can't complain. Otherwise, I'll start sounding like a whiner.
You don't want to be that.
No.
But that's a good place to put faith and trust. What's that?
I said nobody wants to be a whiner.
Right. Right. Anyway, would you? I'm going to go away for a little bit when you start into your conversation here, but would you tell me a little bit about your story?
Yeah. So, I mean, my story and my background has been extensive, but originally, from a professional perspective, I was a financial advisor for 22 years. Had my own financial services practice and did so out of my office in Auburn, California, and actually had an opportunity to do a radio show back in 2009. And so for almost 9 years, I did radio marketing, did a radio show, talked about investments, investment management, that kind of a thing. And it was awesome. I'd never seen anything do what it had done in terms of lead generation and or interest in our services. But ended up selling that practice in 2018, and you know, financial services is one of those industries that it's challenging because you're never recognized, you're never praised. In other words, when you make money, some people think you didn't make them enough, and then if you don't make a money, obviously you're not praised for that. You lost money, that kind of a thing. So it was one of those industries that I didn't love. And really felt like God was calling me to do something different. So I sold that practice in 2018. And then my wife, I'm married to my high school sweetheart. We've been together for 26 years. We have 4 boys. Our oldest is 24, then 23, then 16 and 14. We decided to start flipping houses together as a family. So we flipped 5 houses in 2019, and we're well on our way to flipping 5 more in 2020. And then the pandemic hit. So you know, that's when many things changed for us. We're still in that business. We're still flipping houses, but that also led to our current endeavor, which is Hope Radio Podcast.
So before we go to Hope Radio Podcast, you skipped a few things in there in terms of, you know, some of the unrest you had and some of the different issues. I read a little bit about you.
Yeah.
your bio. So, how do you get through all that?
Well, I would say going back to 2009, that was a pivotal time in my life. You're referencing the personal bankruptcy. I think back then in 2008, 2009, the Great Recession had occurred. And at that time, the stock market had fallen 50% in 6 months. I mean, literally from October of 2008 to March of 2009, the market was off 50%. And so in reality, a lot of people were wondering, is the sky going to fall completely? Is it going to go away? What's going to happen to my money? And so at that particular time, people didn't want to make an investment decision. And my income, my livelihood was dependent on people moving and investing money. And so people just didn't want to do that. And so Jen and I really were in a situation where I didn't know what to do. She didn't know what to do to come alongside me. I was heavily drinking. At that particular time, I was going through a 750 milliliter bottle of vodka, which is like those big Costco vodka bottles, every 2 days. And it was just one of those things. I mean, I knew I had a problem when you're drinking in the morning just to get you tuned up for the day. That's not a good sign. I used to drink with vodka and Sunny D's. My kids would have these Sunny Delight drinks, and I used to put vodka inside of those. And all of that really kind of came to a head in 2009. And what I mean by that is that God really brought me to my knees. I remember being in my truck. It was just one of those days where the pressure of the world felt too much to bear. And I just begged him, God, I can't continue to go on like this. I can't live like this. I like to call myself at that particular time a Christian atheist. I believed in God, but there wasn't a lot about my life that would evidence that. You couldn't look at me and know immediately that I was a Christian living his faith. Even though I believed in God, I wasn't active. And so I told him, listen, you can take my life. You can take, my family, my wife, my business, like whatever. I can't go on. Like, I just need to relieve the pressure. And immediately I felt a peace. I did feel something come over me at that time. And I liken it to grace and mercy and peace. And I felt comforted in that moment. It was weird. And quite honestly, from that moment on, I haven't touched alcohol since. And a lot of my life began to change at that time. I'm not saying that works for everyone, but for me at the time, I had reached my bottom. I had wallowed in misery. I tried to hide. I had tried to drink myself numb, and none of it worked. And so I was looking for something that would work. And I think that's when my faith stepped in, God stepped in. And to answer your question, how did I get through it? He carried me through it. Like he took that, and I didn't go to AA. I didn't go into any 12-step program. And I've had people say to me and I'm not saying that people shouldn't, but I'm just saying that I've had people say to me I should have, and likely had withdrawals based on how much I was drinking at the time. But I haven't touched a drop since. He just completely relieved me of that. So I'm very grateful.
Wow, that's incredible. That's an incredible story. So what did your wife say as you were going through all this?
Well, quite honestly, my wife was fed up. I mean, she was tired of the drinking. She was tired of just how I was behaving at the time. And thankfully she loved me enough to stick beside me as long as she did. But what began with that surrender ultimately culminated in 2.5 years worth of couples counseling for the two of us. And it led to 6 years worth of individual counseling for me, after the fact. I wanted to know why I was making some of the decisions I was making. I wanted to know why I was susceptible to alcohol. I wanted to know what was going on in my head, some of those messages that you're told as a kid. Growing up, I had a stepfather that for the first 10 years of my life was verbally abusive. He was one of these guys that said I would never amount to anything. I wasn't going to be successful. It's like, and those words, they became part of my DNA, and in a way I wanted to prove him wrong, but not at the cost of losing everything that I loved, which was my family. So I was highly queued up for success, business. I was a workaholic at the time. So I really had to It changed my friend network. I had to change my lifestyle. I had to change my mindset. I mean, everything about me really had to change.
Wow. That's amazing. I don't know of anybody that can share this similar story. I mean, similar, yes, but I mean the stories are they're so much different. So I find that fascinating. Now, coming through that, so after the fact, I mean, you can look back, and Hope Radio certainly is something that's doing very well, and you're having a lot of success with that podcast. But before that, what? And I have many questions going through my head. So, one of them is, what is your daily practice? What is it that helps you keep grounded? You know, that allows you to stay with clarity, have clarity about what your message is and what you're doing.
I think for me, I've always been one of these people that tries to keep my thought process, my vision board, so to say, in front of me. I'm an optimistic person by nature. I'm not a glass half full kind of guy. And I'm very ambitious when it comes to dreams and goals that I have. So for me, how I maintain that focus is continuing to follow what I feel is God's will for my life. You know, let me give you an example. I think sometimes that we have the best of intentions and think that we know how life is supposed to work and where it's supposed to go, but often we don't. So going back to that season of my life, 2009, 2010, I happened to get a chance to do radio marketing at that time. Total God story how that happened, but I decided to do radio marketing. Initially, it led to 30-second commercials, then 60-second commercials. And I thought I did a great job on the commercials. I spent $12,000 on the marketing at the time.
Wow.
And for me, that was a majority of my savings. I mean, I didn't really have $12,000 to spend. And so there were 70 commercials that aired, and quite literally none of those commercials created a lead. I mean, it was $12,000 that just basically went out the window. But it was one of those things that I couldn't stop thinking about. It wouldn't leave me. And I think that was that God whisper, that God nudge that he had. So about 6 months after that, I reached out to a gentleman I'd met in that process and asked him if he had actually a show available. What I'd realized, or what I thought I'd figured out, was, you know, you can say you're different in 30 seconds or 60 seconds, but you don't really have enough time to convey or communicate that effectively. And so I felt like if I could do a weekend radio show like I knew some other financial advisors had in 1 hour time, I certainly could have an opportunity to communicate how we were different. And so for 4 months, waited 4 months for an open opportunity to get on, then was on, spent another $5,000 or $6,000 without really any leads. And then I just thought, God, I felt like you called me to this. I felt like this was going to be part of my life somehow, but I'm just not connecting the dots. And about that time, my wife had somebody reach out from Facebook that was an old high school friend who was doing a radio show down in LA, total unsolicited, out of nowhere. You know, this guy just reaches out and says, hey, you know, Shawn should listen to my show. I've been doing one in LA and maybe we can talk. I mean, I made a lot of mistakes in the beginning and maybe I can stop him from making some of those. And so through that conversation, I ended up changing kind of the format of my show and went from getting no calls to getting 22, 25, 30 calls, ultimately led to me getting over hundreds of calls to the show. And it was just one of those divine connections that happened. But about 1.5 years, 2 years into it, so I was in full steam at the time, I had a dream, and the dream was that God gave me this vision for Hope Radio, some sort of show on hope. Now, just for context, not to toot my own horn at all, but at this particular time, 2 years into radio, I was spending about $250,000 a year on radio. Wow. And that was my main marketing lead source. And so this thought of doing a show about hope, how am I going to make money? How am I going to cover the costs? Who's going to listen? Like, what am I supposed to do with this? So I talked to Jen about it at the time and told her what I felt God was leading me to do, or what he had said. And she liked it too, but had no idea what to do with it. And so we basically shelved it for 7 years. But it was one of those things, Brian, that would nudge me every single year. It was something would happen. The word hope would come up and it would spark that memory. And, it was just always in the background, not so much in the foreground. Ended up selling my practice in 2018, got completely out of financial services, total God story there too. The guy that ended up buying it was somebody that I had mentored and trained, spent a lot of time, effort, and energy on, and he left me after I made him, just the exact replica of me. He started his own firm. I was highly upset for several years. And lo and behold, if we don't reconnect, and isn't it crazy that because I brought him in the business and taught him everything I knew, that my practice was the perfect practice for him to buy. So anyway, he buys my business and we start flipping houses. And then when the pandemic hit, it shut down everything. And that's when God just flooded me again with this whole idea of hope. That people would need hope, that people would be anxious, that they'd be nervous, that they'd be concerned, that they'd be worried, that they'd have fear about the future, fear of change. And so I felt like he was calling me. This is what I prepared you for. And so going back to what I originally say is that we can have all the plans in the world, but it's God's timing. It's paying attention to those whispers, those nudges, those things that sit in your spirit that you can't let go of, that bother you occasionally, and you're unsure what to do with them. You just got to give that space. You got to give it time, and then God will reveal it. But it's been a crazy ride to say the least. So to focus on that, I listen to a lot of Joel Osteen to keep my positive enthusiasm up. And quite honestly, doing now the Hope Radio podcast, we're coming up on 100 episodes. We started it on March 27th of this year. I've had a front row seat during the pandemic to 100 stories of hope. So if that hasn't been beneficial to me, I don't know what is. It's kind of crazy that Jen and I doing this in an altruistic perspective might be the biggest ones benefited in the whole thing, because we've had front row seats to the whole hope discussion.
I know exactly what you're saying, because I started to do this to just have people talk about their vision and how their vision is aligned with their core values, and talk about that. I'm like, but I had no idea I was going to get so much good information from it.
Yeah.
It's been amazing.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that was a total unexpected blessing. It's like when you jump, when you move, when you meet God halfway, it's like, it's crazy what things can happen.
So talk to me a little bit about, and the listeners, because I know we have some on here. I've seen a few comments pop up, but what would you tell people when it comes to, I'm definitely one that believes in God, and I know that God's hands is at work, but how do you do what you do and continue on for those years, number of years, 7 years, I think you said, from the first time you had the nudging about Hope Radio, and continue on doing things, doing whatever, taking action. So there's so much to be said for somebody that has that calling. They know what it is they're supposed to do, but there's something else to be said for the person that actually does something with it. So
yeah, for the longest time, I felt like I was ignoring God in that regard with the whole Hope Radio nudging and stuff. And no disrespect to somebody that isn't faithful, but like when you've lived through what I lived through, when you had alcohol taken from you in a moment, when you feel the presence of the Holy Spirit, God with you, like that changed me. That whole experience of being on my knees in 2009 and the business was going under, and Jen and I were filing for personal bankruptcy. We're going to get our house foreclosed on. I mean, here I am, a financial advisor going through a ruinous financial time. And so I just felt very, very lost, I guess, to say the least. And so when I felt him come alongside me, when I was in the right space, I really feel like from that point on, I was invigorated, and I think a lot of things changed for me, and I had to want that change. I didn't want to go back to where I was. So I'm a pretty ambitious guy. I've had a mantra ever since I was in my early 20s. It's a Japanese word called kaizen, and some people may be familiar with it, but the word represents continuous, ongoing improvement in all aspects of your life. For me in my life, it means that I'm always striving to be the best father I can be. And I think I can make room or have room for improvement there. I can be a better husband. I can be a better son to my mom. I can be a better community member. I can be a better Christian, those types of things. So always pursuing the maximum of my potential, and whether that's in my business life or personal life. And I guess the one example I can give you is relative to the pandemic. I, like everyone else, am nervous. I'm anxious about the future. I'm here, a guy flipping houses, and I had my project stopped for 5 months, and now I've seen costs go up 20, 30, 40% because of the tariffs. And so there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of things that are outside of my control. I have to hold on to that lightly. But what I decided to do was, I turned 50 in January. And so this year during the pandemic, I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get into the best shape of my life. I can control what I put in my mouth. I can control how physical I can be. And so I endeavored to try to get into the best shape of my life. And since the end of May, I've lost 22 pounds. I'm almost to my goal weight.
Whoa.
And I'm living a life of intention with regard to my physicality and my fitness. And I feel like that's a win. When life throws you a whole bunch of challenges, some of it, nothing you can control at all, then I look to other areas of my life where I can create wins or successes. And I think that fuels, my creativity. It fuels the belief that whatever I set my mind to accomplish, I can accomplish. And it gives me hope that whatever my endeavors are, that I'll be able to see them through.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So tell me a little bit about your weight loss. I mean, you 22 pounds in what, 3, 4, 5 months, whatever that is. I mean, that's pretty amazing. So you did it by exercise. You did it by, watching what you eat. Was there a specific regimen that you're on?
Well, the couple things. My wife is my biggest inspiration. She's got 50,000 plus followers on Instagram, mostly because of her running and physicality, her fitness. And so for the longest time, she kept nudging me and prompting me and would ask me, you never putting pressure, but, always saying, if you need help, I can help you. So my real fitness journey began in 2016. She did a run, walk, jog, 1 mile a day, every day for the month of June. And she sent that out as a challenge to all of her followers. Well, this last June, she ended up having 6,800 people participate from 15 different countries, and over 2,000 people complete the challenge. But back in 2016, I participated for the first time. She was about her third or fourth year of doing it at the time. And at that particular juncture, I'm 5'9", and I was 222 pounds when I started that particular challenge that year. Mm-hmm. And so my first stage 1 of weight loss was about 22, 23 pounds. That was sparked by this run, walk, or jog 1 mile a day thing. And so now Jen and I are closing in. She just told me today that Sunday will be our day 1600. So 4.5 years that we've been doing. We never stopped this one run, walk, or jog 1 mile a day every day. And so back in April, my wife, again, being one of the forerunners of the physical fitness industry, she got a Peloton bike about 3 years ago. Wow. And for the longest time, she said, you should jump on this bike. And I'm like, I don't like to ride. I don't want to be on a bike. Quite honestly, as a dude, I just imagined, parts of my body being sore riding a bike for as long as she was riding it, that I didn't want to have foot sore. I just didn't want to have any part of sitting on a saddle, being on a bike. It just did not sound fun. Right. Not going anywhere. Not anything. Yeah. Yeah. And so for 3 years, I didn't touch that damn bike. And so here comes the pandemic. April rolls around. And so I call this now stage 2 of my weight loss. So I jump on that bike, and Brian, I kid you not, from the first moment I did my first class until today, I've been hooked. I've never sweat so much. I've never enjoyed something so much. It's not like running or jogging. It sparked this. And so I usually get up in the morning. I'll do a 30 to 45-minute Peloton ride. And then I'm a big believer in weight training too. So we'll work out. We have a gym in our home. And so, here I've had a gym in my home all this time and really didn't ever use it. In my defense, my wife calls it her girl cave. So it's like,
she goes there to get away from you.
No boys allowed kind of thing, right?
Yeah, but you.
Yeah, exactly. So it began with lots of cardio, and then MyFitnessPal, which is a free app on most Android phones or iPhones, and just paying attention. I mean, the big secret is watching what you're eating. I mean, you can work out all you want, but if you can't control what you put in your mouth, you're not going to get the results that you want to see. So just being conscious of my caloric intake and being conscious of paying attention. I mean, we had talked to a friend of ours who used to have 3 or 4 cups of coffee a day. She didn't realize that she was putting 600 calories worth of creamer in her coffee, these 3 or 4 coffees a day. It's stuff like that people don't really pay attention to. But if you're cognizant about tracking it, you'll become much more aware. Sure. And then if you start to see results, it's addictive,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I'm thinking about what I take in. I just had some little pretzels. They had frosting on them, and it was really, really good. I had 5 or 6 of them, so not terrible, but still, it's the whole idea of eating something that I shouldn't be eating. I mean, I could have simply gotten the box of carrots out of the refrigerator instead.
Well, hey, I'm not a fan of carrots, and hey, I like the sweet stuff. I'll tell you, through it, all of this physicality that I've had through the weight loss that is what I call phase 2. I think that Oreos are one of the double stuffed Oreos are like my nemesis. They're like my kryptonite, right? And I found a way with my physicality to eat Oreos every day, just because I absolutely love them. So it's not always about taking away that good stuff, that really flavorful, awesome stuff that we all like to eat. It's about doing it in moderation. It's about planning for it. It's about making sure that you are conscious of fitting it in, and not fitting it in, and next thing you know, you ate 600 calories worth of something, at 9 o'clock at night that you probably shouldn't have eaten.
Yeah. That's I noticed that too. Eating after 8 o'clock, it's usually a bad idea.
Well, it's like what your mom told you: nothing good happens after midnight, right? So don't stay out after midnight. It's just, but I think we're all on our journey, and for me, I noticed a lot of people use food as a way to address anxiety or loss of control, etc. Thankfully, I'm not a foodie. I don't. My wife is. I mean, she thinks about what she's going to eat 3 days from now. Like, she plans everything out.
Yeah.
And for me, it's not that I don't enjoy food. I enjoy it very much. It's just I'm not somebody that obsesses about it. I could literally eat the same thing every day for a long time and not really be bored with it or have a problem with it. But so I think that's actually a blessing relative to physicality and weight loss and stuff like that I can maintain a regimen like that.
For sure. So you gave me your website, and I'm going to put up here on the ticker so everybody can see it. But I'm wondering, what would you say is something that we should know, our audience should know about you and the work you're doing?
Well, I think that there's a lot of people right now that are maybe feeling uncertain and anxious about the future. And so, for me right now, the Hope Radio podcast, which is a husband and wife co-hosted podcast. So Jen and I do it together. And what we wanted to have is real people, real stories, real hope. My thought behind it is that if people can listen to people like yourself overcoming challenges and adversity and life's curveballs that they never saw coming. There's a lot of, you live life long enough and you've been through some stuff, right? And so if that stuff didn't kill you, you probably learned some lessons. And what I also realize is that many of the things that I thought were insurmountable challenges ultimately were not insurmountable, but they also led to huge discoveries of positivity, blessing, thriving after. I mean, I went through a personal bankruptcy in 2009. I owed like hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of back taxes to the IRS. I had no idea how I was going to pay back. And through the radio show, Total God radio show that I was doing at the time, that marketing actually worked. I was able to, on my birthday in 2013, walk into the IRS office down in Sacramento and literally write a check for $375,000 to wipe out all of my owed tax liability. And the gal that was helping me had been there for 25 years. And I asked her, I said, how many times have you seen somebody come in and do this? And she said, in all my career. And I said, yeah. She's all, you're the third. And I'm like, okay, well, there you go. So, I mean, the idea is that through these challenges, we often discover something about ourselves. We often, reach another level. And so I wanted to have a medium through the podcast to bring people on to talk about the challenges that they faced and overcome, and then to illustrate to people that may not have been through those types or those significant of a challenge that there is hope, that they too can make it through. Brian lost his sight for 6 months and thought he was going to be blind for the rest of his life. And it didn't turn out that was the case. But that had to have been a very, very challenging time for you. And so that has led to your calling. It's led to your purpose. It's led to your destiny. And so I think if people can understand that maybe the challenges that they face could lead to the greatest, opportunity to discover their purpose and their reason for being on this planet, then I think they'd view them differently. I think that would be hope giving to them.
Yeah. No, I agree. Now, other than your website, where else can people find your podcast?
So we're on Stitcher, we're on Spotify, we're on every single podcast platform. So Apple Podcast, if you have the Apple Podcast app on your iPhone, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, SoundCloud, like anywhere somebody consumes, Amazon Alexa, if they consume a podcast, all they've got to do is search Hope Radio Podcast. The website isn't live yet. You've got hoperadiopodcast.com on there. It'll be live imminently. And by that, I mean in the next week to 10 days. And so we're also on the Facebook and Instagram at Hope Radio Podcast on both Facebook and Instagram. And I've got an archive of all of our prior shows there, some pictures of some of the guests. And it's anywhere you consume podcasts, we're there.
Oh, that's awesome. I want to thank you for coming on today. I really appreciate you sharing the story of what you've been through and the Hope Radio Podcast, of what it is and how you're helping other people. I really appreciate that.
Hey, you're welcome. And thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely. So what we'll do as a tribe here, the Vision Alignment Group, we'll go out and we'll support that podcast. But if we have stories, much like Shawn has mentioned here, we can connect with him as well and tell him our story, and maybe even be on this podcast. So I want all of you to remember that for one, share this video with other people, but yourself, I want you to be empowered to go out and have a conversation with Shawn as well about your story, because your story is awesome. We are all awesome. Remember that. Absolutely. So
we're always looking for new guests, and that's been the biggest challenge. So if you have a story of hope to share, if you have a message to share regarding the subject of hope, we would love to talk with you. Hope Radio Podcast.
And I'm willing to bet you that even though you don't think you have a story to share, I think you do. You just don't know it yet. So
I agree with that.
We'll have a conversation, and we'll go from there. Thank you very much, Shawn. I really appreciate your time, and I'm just grateful for all you've given us. I love you, and I love the rest of the people that are on here today. Thank you all.
All right. Thank you, Brian. Take care.
Take care. Bye.